Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the Sixth World? Yes! Today we're going to be diving back into Shadowrun to talk about yet another nation you can go and visit. Tir Tairngire. Butchering its name a lot. Tir Tairngire. I'll try my best. I have a pronunciation of it. I'll try my best to say it right. We're going to be visiting it with the Tir Nations, Nations of Elf. So, join my hand, Pantasnareth and Dracovin, as I butcher a lot of things that I can't say properly. Join my hand as I drive you through the Matrix, through the astral planes, into the Sixth World itself. We're time-traveling to the future of the 2070s and 80s to Shadowrun. Time travel's a bitch, especially when you're going through the astral plane and the Matrix a little bit, you know. The original Matrix, not Matrix movie. Anyway, so yes, we're going to be talking about Tir Tairngire today, one of the Tir Nations, and an area that is driven out of what is Oregon, Nevada, Northern California. We'll talk about it. But what kind of sources can I look into? Well, I have a bunch of sources that I'm using, and some of them dive into more, and especially one of the books here I'm kind of didn't use because it's old, but you could probably use it if you want a little bit more interesting information on it. The Tir Tairngire book from, I believe that's 2nd edition, is one of the good sources you can start out with for a lot of information. It's very in-depth, but it's a little outdated for a lot of information, so I didn't use a lot. I used a little bit. The Shadows of North America does provide a very good bit of information too. I used part of that, and I used the Sixth World Almanac for things, along with the wiki site online, to give some extra information from other sources here. But these are the books I'd recommend if you want to dive deeper from what I'm going to be talking about today. I like starting out with that. I forgot to say that earlier. Anyway. Here it is. This is Tir Tairngire. What's here? What kind of things here? Who are here? Well, it's about, at least at the time of third edition, it was around 5 million people. 81% of that was elf. That does mean that 19% were non-elf, of which dwarf and orc made a combined 12% of that, with 4% human, 1% troll, and a little bit of other mixed in. About 8% was sinless, 26 below poverty line, 10% corporately affiliated. We'll talk about that. And the two major languages being Spherial, the Elven language, about 55% spoke, and English being 85%. Nuyen being the main source of money. Alright. Where did this come about from? Well, it all comes down to a combination of factors. If we look at the... We'll talk about it in a second. I went out of, in my own brain, out of order. Let's talk about what's here first. Sorry, brain work, not good. Let's talk about Kara-Seer. Kara-Seer. Or Portland. That's Portland. Now, it's called something else now, but if you would think an R time period, that's Portland. It is the capital of Tairngire. Is it right that time? Tairngire. Largest domestic population, largest diverse population. Basically, 30% of Kara-Seer is non-elf. Basically, it was walled off for many decades from the rest of Tir, and the government basically threw non-elves, malcontents, criminals into that region. The government shifted from imports to exports to Seattle, and Portland went into economic tailspin. Unemployment skyrocketed. It became a breeding ground for the rebellion, which we'll talk about when we talk about their history. Riots escalated. The city was put under martial law until the High Prince Zincan revoked it in 2065. There's a lot of subsidiaries. Basically, it fell apart. 2065, which we'll talk about historically, was when things shifted for the city, when we got the new government, and the city has been basically being supported. It's a trade place now. It's opened up. They removed the walls. There's now business coming in. It's a city on the turn. And, you know, it still has its view of Mount Hood. It's still got its Portland's old 13 picturesque bridges still exist there. There's a lot of really nice things here. It's a great tourist destination. It's been growing that kind of thing too. It's been on a economic and big turnaround. It's also home to Tir's largest corporation, Telestrain Industries. Talk about it a little bit more, but yes. Then we have, I'm going to butcher this one, Malchthus, which was Salem in Washington. It was actually the capital until it moved to Portland in 2040. It's got numerous civic and government holdings and buildings that function there. The central licensing department of the Tir Liquor Control Board is also there. It also processes Tir Sin processing facilities and storages there. It's got Olirant University, which specializes in law and city planning. So they've got a lot of stuff that really makes them still a major city, being that they were a capital of the nation for a while. And then, of course, the last major city, again, I'm going to butcher this one, Tairngire, which was Eugene. I'm just called Eugene. It's a middle-sized city in the central Willamette Valley area, dominated by agriculture. The University of Tir Tairngire is located here. It's well known for its postgraduate programs in applied and theoretical thaumaturgy. It's a mix of neo-modern buildings, ivy-covered brick buildings, botanical gardens, research fields. It's got a small paranormal zoo, paranormal animals. So a lot of interesting things going on in that city there. Other locations are places like Mount Hood, which, over during the Great Ghost Dance. The major volcano, Crater Lakes there. So pretty major locations that exist within the nation. Now we talk history. I was trying to do that out of order in my brain there for a second. Yeah. Oops. All right. So now we have to go back in time to 2029. We have to look at the Salish Shide Council, one of the major nations of the Native American nations that was formed, and they basically opened their borders to all metahumans, not just those of native ancestry. The Sin Search Elf tribe formed shortly after that, claiming a territory in the south. Then we get to 2035, when portions of the Sin Search tribe, calling itself the Sineste, declared a takeover of the southern portion of Salish Shide lands, renaming it Tir Tairngire. This, of course, was led by Lug Shorehand, who announced this to the council. He was appointed High Prince of the Council of Princes. There's some border skirmishes between Tir and Salish forces, basically as people relocated to. Laufrey was granted a seat on the Council of Princes. It's still 2035. We'll talk about the Council of Princes and the government changes and the major things there. But basically, a lot of stuff too. They revoked their Native American nations affiliation too as part of this. The split was relatively peaceful. Basically, high rate of UGE births in the former state here means that there was a lot of elves in this nation. And liberal immigration policies swelled the population further. And it had an autocratic monarchy with a rigid class-based system. Yeah, that was established, with the land of promise for elves and a government to match it. They eventually invaded Northern California to Redding, but high casualty warfare drove them back eventually with a disputed zone. See the old map I just showed in a minute there. In 2053, they again tried to take more territory, focusing on the Shasta Dam, but Hetsby basically retaliated. Relations with the Tir's neighbor become strained. Hetsby joined the Council of Princes amid protests, became the most prominent figure of the nation. Basically, Hetsby stopped them, and then negotiated with them and joined them basically to keep them in check. They were like, hey, don't do any more. You're fine. Stop it. You've been there. You're good. During this time period, though, we had the rights of progressivism, which is hundreds of thousands participated in the first one, and the second one, and the third one. People disappeared during the third one, which are major rights that they did during this time period. That does a lot with their culture. Anyway, Crater Lake becomes closed in 2054. Ethan the Scribe is officially granted a council seat, which he held for years secretly in 2055. Even the scribe being an immortal elf. See my immortal elf episode. Yeah, he got a seat there. In 2057, they declare a state of emergency when Dracovin dies. Yeah, that caused some issues. Great Dragon, President Dracovin died, closed their borders, limited trade, cracked down on political parties, and their economy basically began to fall apart. There was depression, economic decline, and the Renale que Tarase, basically the Rebels of the Spire, was formed in 2058. I think I didn't know that. I'm probably sure that the name of their nation, the Land of Promises, is what Tir Tairngire means in Celtic. In Gaelic, sorry. I didn't write my names. The Tir Princes postponed the forthright progression for an indefinite period. We got the rebel group then. Yeah. In 2061, the state of emergency officially ends, and Lug Sunderlands has new right of progression that be held in 2063. Without warning, both Lothier and Anthony Oakforest retire from the council. Anthony Oakforest does. Gallatin Oakforest goes missing, and in 2062, that's when Hetsby gets the seat. Lauren had Laufrey had already stepped down by that time, so keep that in mind. That's only one dragon in the council at a time. Anyway, so we got the rebellion starting now. We got terrible economics going bad. We got the rebel faction. Second crash occurs. It's the final straw. There's a communication slowing going down. Tir citizens in this panic. Rebellion goes. There's an emergency meeting in the Star Chamber. The remaining princes are bow to public demand, stepping down, making way for fair and open elections. So, we go from this monarchy that we've been for like 30 years to a democratic government. The new government of a representative elected council, the Star Chamber, or the, butcher this one again, Seirache Elvana, with legislative power, an elected high prince for a 5-year term, 2-year term limit, and a high council of 10 elected positions. So they are mimicking their thing of the high prince and the council of princes. It's just they're now elected positions. The previous nobility retain their personal residences and their titles, but have no part in government unless duly elected. I'll talk about the nobility a little bit in a moment when I talk about their politics and stuff. We've got a noble class. They still remain there, but they don't have power in the government anymore. So keep that in mind. The first open election was held in January 5th of 2065, where Zeleri Zincan, who was the only orc prince on the council, was elected high prince. The only other two former members of the Council of Princes to be re-elected or into this new government were Hetsby, still a prince, re-elected, and Rex, who was the Sasquatch from the council. Everybody loves Rex. Everybody would vote for Rex. Rex is great. Rex is our favorite. Everyone thumbs up to Rex. He's got the best merchandise. None of the previous princes were elected. For reasons! So, again, now the economy is on the upturn. Things are getting better. That's where we are. Tourism is returning, which is nice and maybe good, maybe bad. Tourism, we'll see how it goes. Alright. We gotta talk politics. And to talk politics, we gotta talk the original politics. The original way things work here in Cuba. Council of Princes. Technically speaking, these was bestly what we could describe as the council. Granted, there were more members. There were 13 of them, not including the High Prince, in our center there. One of those 13 was a secret member. And this is distinguished from the other 200 or so princes that were there, which connects up to our various classes in the caste system. So they have basically ranks in their social system. The classless, the Uranus, which don't have a title, gentry, which are squires, chivalry, sir, or demoiselle, noble, which are lord and lady, comital, which are count and countess, ducal, which is duchess, royalty, which is prince or princess. So this was their caste system. It still is kind of in place here. This was the system put in place by the original group. And so we do have to keep this all in mind here while we're talking about this entire thing. So, yeah. And these were known as princes regardless of gender. Didn't matter if you're male or female. That's an important thing also to keep in mind when we talk about the Council of Princes. It's just a title. But basically, in amongst the 13, there were 4 which were like core to it, basically. The Inner Council. Sean Laverty, Ithram the Scribe, Jin Ni Farah, Sosen Narian. Along with the head, Surehand, these were the true people in charge. There were originally 3 elves that were placeholders, but they kind of moved around. And then we do got other council members, including things like Rex. And of course, we had Larry. Larry Sinking was part of it. He was in that later A there. And yeah. And of course, Rex doesn't really show up much, but everybody loves Rex. Rex! He is very little involved in the council business. He just shows up and then disappears into the forest for a while. You know, and Rex is basically his verbal indicator because his real name is unpronounceable except in the form of a 20-second song. So, and he's huggable and lovable and has a doll line, and he's the greatest. And Headspeed's pretty good, you know. Headspeed, though controversial, basically became a frontrunner of speaking out on things. Anyway, we now shift to the new government. Yes, the new government. The Star Chamber did exist. The representative of the people did kind of exist. But we now have this new government of elected officials, where we do have some of the old government. We got some new princes, council in line. Again, they have the same kind of names as the old one, but it's a new government. It's a new way of doing things. The caste system still kind of works. The nobles and the higher-ups still have their estates. They don't have political power anymore. It's kind of like that what happened in some countries where the nobility lost their power and they had a democratic government. In some countries, the nobility didn't get killed off and they kind of stuck around. In this case, they do. Maybe some of them are popular enough to keep their places. I mentioned 3 of them. Yeah. That's the complex history of Tir Tairngire's government. And kind of where it sits now, getting into the early 2070s kind of time period. Alright. Let's talk about a little bit about the economic things that are going on there, corporations and stuff like that. So, to talk about it, we do have to note that there are some corporations that are within Tir. Telestrand Industries is one of their largest. There are other ones, Charisma Associates and Universal Omnitech. These are big names in Tir. But there are also subsidiaries of other big corporations that exist within it. The reason that there's only subsidiaries and no major megacorp show up there is Tir has not signed the Better Business Accords. Basically, the deal that gives sovereign rights to corporations that form there. You know, the Business Recognition Accords. I call it Better Business Accords. It's Business Recognition Accords. That's my misspeaking for a second. So megacorporations can openly operate in Tir, but they do through subsidiaries because they want their extraterritoriality, and so their subsidiaries who don't really care about that as much can exist there. The Council of Princes as a collective own 5% of the subsidiary. The head corporate officer must also be a Tir subject unless the council gives special dispensation. The High Prince can allow a mega corporation to operate without these restrictions by giving a prince's seal. Kokora Biotech was the last corp to receive that, but it left the country when the economy went bad. And the council as a collective used to own at least 5% of all national corporations. This restriction has been lifted to revitalize the economy. So basically these were some things that were in place. With the new government, it sort of still exists the same way, but like again, you basically still need a stipend to allow there. But Ares Macro Technology, Andalusian Light Industries, Mississippi Computer Technologies, New Dawn Corporation, and of course I said Telestray, Williamette consult corporation all have some presence within the nation though now, especially now that it's economically on the upturn and getting back into it. With open borders, more investments coming in to see, again, they still haven't signed those business recognition accords, and to see how the corporate thing changes in this climatic situation is going to have to kind of change. I just ran into me. Now, there is some criminal elements, major smugglers and the Daisy Eaters that's run into Tir, and the Lynch Mob is a major gang that primarily of humans and orcs that operates between Portland and Albany. That's one of the Go gangs. So there is a criminal element here to the entire area, and I could dive into a little more but let's just say that in this kind of new shadow and new place here, and especially with the opening up, business for Shadowrunners certainly opens up too. Opportunities, new corporations, new buildings, new economy, new money. Man, it's a great time to be a Shadowrunner in Tir. Well, that's a good place to leave it there for today. I continue to try to push her. Tairngire. I'm trying my best now. I'm very bad at pronouncing anything, even in English. It's an interesting nation because it was kind of formed for a series of things. The fact is that in the early 21st century, with the advent of elves, dwarves, and all the other metahumans, there wasn't a massive amount of basically racism that occurred towards them. And then when the Native American nations formed, within the area that we found, Tir, they tried their best. We found elves being allowed in to the Salish Side Council and other metahumans. And with a large number of them in this region, they basically, their group, their tribe, formed a nation, and a powerful one at that best. A powerful one for the region. They had a lot of backing. Backing of a dragon is a lot. Having their own language is a lot. Being there in the nation is a lot. They being able to attack their neighbors and maintain themselves in amongst that have proven that they had a lot of power. And we can see in the shadows, they have things like the immortal elves on their side. Ethan the Scribe. I've done an episode that talked about him, along with some others, so, I can't deny this nation had a lot of power behind it. But mismanagement and mistakes led to a near collapse, especially economically. And this new revolution, this new government, this new people built out of what was left there, this new revitalized nation, might make a difference in the way it forms. We're going to have to kind of sit back and see how the entire nation evolves at this point in time. It's just the fact that they've had to go through all of this that, has trial by fire in a lot of ways. Certainly speaking, they had a very charismatic leader that led them to a new nation, declared himself king. You can only be the king so long before you become a tyrant. And that kind of seems what happened. The man became a tyrant, and things turned against him. But he gave an opportunity. And so now we have it. Tir Tairngire, front and center, ready to build itself on the new decade. We're getting into the 2070s, the 2080s, and we are bouncing back, becoming stronger, becoming something better than it was. That's what we're doing. I hope you liked the video for today. I love diving into Shadowrun, talking about these nations and places, and especially talking about places that you can adventure with your Shadowrunners. Yes, we don't know a lot past the early 4th edition, but, we have a very good view of how Tir is going. And we'll have a very good idea. So, certainly speaking, it's pretty easy for a player to jump in here, or a GM to use this as a location plan. I would highly recommend this for plenty of other nations. I hope you enjoyed diving into it. If you want to see more of my stuff, I have a schedule that's up that you can tell you when I'm going to either be live on Twitch recording things or streaming, either or of those things, or when I upload things on YouTube, it gives you that schedule too. I put that up on my Discord, on my YouTube channel, on the discussion area, and of course over on Twitter/X for now. That's the other social media I use. I will be getting to do stuff in the future. But remember, you can always check me out on Discord or Twitter/X for updates and stuff, tactics, little things like that. that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on, especially if I have to change or now move schedules around and stuff like that with things going on in my life. And do my best to get here on a relatively good schedule, you know, the best I can without the things being delayed here and there. Sometimes things remember to do all the various things, and like subscribing, the bell, all that kind of stuff over on YouTube. Same, you know, the best things to support over on Twitch. And welcome, Faithless. Gaelic names suck. That's everything. Shout out. Oh, remember, check out Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Crimson Queen, my live play of a TRPG. I'm doing Pathfinder First Edition. I'll be doing more games in the future, but that's when you can check out. And of course, the Sesame Games. So 6. Okay, everybody, I'm going to get going, hang out, Twitch chat for a little while longer, maybe do another video. But until that next time, I bid you all there a deep and farewell.